Well, we welcome you back to the GT Cup Europe Championship as we look ahead to qualifying one here at round 4 for Paul Ricard. We arrive here in our 7th visit in this championship to the Le Castellet circuit with air temperature standing at 24 degrees, 57% humidity, the track temperature sitting at 26. We've had sparks of rain, little flutters, I should say, through the course of the morning. The track, to a certain level, back in our single-seater event in the Euroformula Open Championship, was declared a wet session with rain lights on, but no signs of any severe weather at the moment. The wet track, though, still being declared by race control with rain lights remaining out on the track. But you join us here with the championship lead still in the hands of Ian Rodriguez and Luca Franca. They have been certainly the story of the campaign so far, with 2 wins under their belt, the first one being back at Portimao in our opening race of the championship. They also won the opening race of the Hockenheim Ring weekend and have taken some superb points finishes. Consistent point scorers throughout the entire season so far, and remain currently the only pairing to actually muster 100% points record, taking it in every race. It was Dieter Schweppes and Leandro Martins who was almost rivaling them in that fact, but of course they did not score in race 2 back at Hockenheim Ring. But we also bring to the table a few changes. We're bringing in a couple of new manufacturers as well, because Greystone GT have arrived here in the GT Cup Europe Championship with Ryan James and Oliver Webb. Of course, many of you who follow the International GT Open will know that Oliver Webb was obviously competing last season with Greystone GT. They're bringing a McLaren Artura Trophy Evo car here to the grid this time, so yet another new manufacturer joining the grid for this Paul Ricard weekend. And also further down we also have the introduction of Scuderia Villorba Corsa with Benjamin Cook and Jamie William Falvey as well, driving the Lamborghini Huracan Super Trofeo Evo 2. George Morgan in the commentary box alongside me once again. It's Chris Stevens.
Hello, George, and yes, great to have a McLaren back on the grid. Of course, we had one at Spa as well, but a first from Greystone GT, who of course got double duties this weekend with their GT3 car in the International GT Open. And that car, the Artura, been racing in the UK with Ollie and Ryan, and looking forward to seeing how they get on. And it is the bronze driver who is taking the car for this session. And of course, with the Scuderia Villorba Corsa team as well, their first sort of entry this season, I believe, in their own name, because running the Fimes team Porsche Cup car that leads the championship at the moment, that has won 2 of the races so far this season, but now bringing in the Lamborghini. But some other kind of breaking news that since we last raced back in Hockenheim it was, which is that our team's championship leaders, Mertel Motorsport, will not be with us for the foreseeable future, I'm afraid, owing to some issues regarding the parent company of the Nuremberg-based dealership. And so a real shame to lose that team and their Ferrari 488 and 296 Challenge cars as well. But we continue on with still plenty of teams ready to fight for overall Pro-Am and Am honours this weekend.
Yeah, we've got 19 cars taking to the circuit here ahead of our trip here to Paul Ricard, as we now see the combination of Leandro Martins, Dieter Schweppes, of course part of the AM class, making their way through the first sector. Of course, this season managing to muster 1 podium through the course of the campaign so far overall, obviously finishing P3 once. Have also achieved a pole position in their own rights, and but obviously that's not going to be their main concern, because they are part of the AM class, and that's what they'll be prioritising. They're currently leading the AM class championship at the moment on 38 points coming into the weekend, 9 points clear of H. de Mello, who sits in second, and fellow countrymen of Leandro Martins, of course, both hailing from Brazil. And Franvel Bugliotti in AM class as well, 3rd in the championship, and 6 points behind H. de Mello at the moment. But the drivers now looking to wind up already for their first runs. Silver class now punts its way to the top. That's Ludovico Longoni, who's now gone fastest with a 2:09.402, but a long way to go.
And of course, we are one additional car down this weekend, George, as well. The one of the SP Racing Team Porsches that won't be racing after a really nasty crash for Mauro Trentin, who was making his debut with that team alongside Stefano Zerbi. And it was a very hard crash for him in free practice 1 yesterday, going into the chicane on the Mistral. and was checked at the medical centre and actually airlifted to the nearest hospital in Toulon for further checks. And of course, we are all wishing him very well.
Yeah. Obviously now we watch as Benjamin Cook and Jamie William Falvey make their way through the final sector as well. We've got the 22 Longoni currently sits on top now, going purple again in the first sector by an almighty 0.5 of a second improvement. So still way more time for these drivers to find. Obviously we're still in the very infant stage of this session as Cook now goes 13th fastest ahead of Fernando Navarrete. It's 1.5 seconds found, nearly 1.6 by Ludovico Longoni on this lap coming out of sector 2, now flying through Bousset. H. de Mello though now 1.6, nearly 1.7 up. So it's got a little bit quicker than Longoni in the middle sector so far. We've got 13 minutes and 30 to go. Martins has gone 13th quickest, now ahead of Cook as well. And elsewhere out on track, we obviously have the timing screens lighting up with vast improvements elsewhere, including the likes of Stinas Longin, who'll be looking for a big weekend as well. Quite a few drivers now trying to dodge and weave through the traffic. H. de Mello in the 44 Porsche, heading down in towards the right-hander for GTL. And now out of the heavy braking zone coming through Virage DuPont, now up towards the line. We'll see where H. de Mello goes, you'd think, to the top, and he will, with a 2:07.605. Longoni, though, who will cross the line and go faster than him, despite matching near enough coming out of the final sector. But in actuality, the gap still quite vast between Longoni and H. de Mello. So it's Longoni back on top after a brief spell in P2.
H. de Mello, one of our main contenders in the AM category for the bronze lineups. 2 wins so far this year, although that championship has been rather dominated so far by Dieter Schweppes and Leandro Martins, the reigning champions in that category. Haven't finished outside the top 2 all year long. Welcome to the Paul Meijer show, as it has been in qualifying with the Dutchman in pretty much every weekend so far this year. And once again, the Hans Weiss Motorsport team running the Burgers Motorsport operation, the Burgers Race Trailers supported and Iron Dames supported entry as well, of course, with Laura van den Hengel taking over that car from Paul Meijer in the race later on. But a championship leading car in Pro-Am with 3 wins so far this season. But Paul's definitely been the benchmark when it comes to qualifying for the overall field so far this year. And it's 2 purple sectors so far on this lap as well. I was half hoping Ollie Webb would be taking this qualifying session in the Greystone McLaren and we could have a bit of a duke out between these 2 great silver class drivers, but it'll be Ollie in the McLaren tomorrow. So here comes Paul Meijer coming up towards the timing line, 2:05.808, and puts 1.2 seconds between himself and Ludovico Longoni, the man second in the championship.
Yeah, that is a spectacular lap to kick things off. Obviously still a long way to go. I'm sure there'll be more time to cook up. And Paul Meijer, incidentally, obviously no stranger to Paul Ricard in recent times. Recently took part in the 12-hour series event here at this very circuit where despite not having any drink fluid in the car, still managing to complete the race and also finishing second as well in his class. So I must say, not a bad performance at all for Paul Meijer, all things considered. So he's already got himself well acclimatised to Paul Ricard in this half. Hopefully the drink is working this time as Rodriguez goes 3rd fastest here this time, and Paul Meijer is winding up for yet another improvement, nearly half a second up already coming out of the first sector. He has definitely been the shining light where it's come to qualifying. If we look at some of the numbers, of course, 3 pole positions, and they are unrivaled in terms of number of poles. I mean, we have had poles from Ludovico Longoni, Pietro Armani, but also Dieter Schweppes, Leandro Martins, and also Davide Larini and Matteo Levisi. But they're all on one pole apiece, whereas we've got Paul Meijer and Laura van den Hengel obviously on 3 at the moment. They could yet make it 4 if Paul Meijer keeps this up. Already 1.2 ahead of Longoni. He's just found another 6.5 tenths coming out of the middle sector, as well as he now launches himself around the Bousset corner. Now back down the inside, just trying to find the curb, committing around every apex you need to around this very tricky slalom. Navarrete goes into 7th fastest, second in the AM class. H. de Mello in 5th at the moment, leading that AM runner contingent. We then, of course, have Stinas Longin in 2nd in terms of Pro-Am. but third overall. Obviously, for those of you wondering what the colours mean on the left-hand side, of course, remember it is silver or grey for the silver class. We also have blue for the Pro-Am, and we of course have Am as well in green, as now Paul Meijer looks to launch his way towards the line. Martin, 7th fastest, just behind H. de Mello. Here comes Paul Meijer, though, to certainly launch out the time, and I can tell you that it's over 2 seconds now, as we have a spinner. That looks like a GDL Porsche there, Chris.
Yeah, couldn't quite spot the number
47, I think, on that one.
One of the GDL cars that is grey. It could have been Giacomo Giberia or potentially Franville. No, Franville Bugliotti's got the grey on his car. Okay, I think it was Giacomo Giberia then in 67.
Yeah.
That would make a bit of sense.
Yeah, it's having a little moment. Coming through the final sector is now the 57. Makes its way around the course. This is Nicholas van Dierendonk, who he, of course, also taking part in a endurance event now in the not-too-distant future. Of course, taking it to Spa-Francorchamps. It will be a home weekend for him, as now we see the 77 also with Cook now making his way around the circuit. This, of course, being one of the new teams that we're well, witnessing a return. Obviously, SVC have had certainly occasions to race in the International GT Open in the past. Of course, have raced under the GT Sport banner in the past, and this time with Benjamin Cook and Jamie William Falvey behind the wheel of this Lamborghini Huracan Super Trofeo Evo 2. Benjamin Cook, who's currently taking qualifying so far, recently taking part in Ginetta GT Academy between 2023 and 2025.
He just lost the car.
Yeah, I was just going to say.
I got away from that. I'm half expecting, if we continue with this, to see a spun Lamborghini in the middle of Le Bousset, but we're riding on board here with Ryan James in the McLaren Arturo, and he's got it wrong as well into Le Bousset. Well, the Lamborghini clearly survived that corner as well. He's nowhere in sight. But yeah, racing in the UK with Ollie Webb this year is Ryan James.
Also champions in McLaren Trophy Europe as well. Actually managing to nestle in a 570S championship charge to their credit. Of course, that was back last year, and that was in his first season of racing as well. So he's really acclimatized to, you know, his time in GT Cup competition.
Yes, of course, it's the Arturo Trophy, not the UK Championship, in number 13. Unlucky for some. 7 minutes to go then, and Paul Meijer, well, H. de Mello's really brought the gap down. It's only 1.7 seconds now between himself and
it's about 4/10 improvement.
Yeah. Of course, that is a bronze class driver there as well in second place, and the SVC Lamborghini well on its way. So we have a mixture of Porsche, Lamborghini and McLaren machinery out there. We have the balance of performance to keep these various cars that you would normally only find in one make competition operating on the same platform.
Now the 19 comes down to the Mistral chicane this time. Of course, in AM class, this is of course Fernando Navarrete, who of course was a former Mertel Ferrari driver, now moving into Porsche competition this time around, and looking to equate himself with 5 minutes and 55 to go. Already some patchwork being done, and that's to the front end bodywork. This is our current championship leader, by the way, Ian Rodriguez, and of course Luca Franca, who is joining him this season. So the tape already out to the very early stages of the weekend, Chris.
My initial thought to that is he's hit the floppy bollards on the exit of Scene.
And loosen the bodywork.
Are usually used to determine track limits around here, although we have a slightly different ruling on that for this weekend. So this is, yeah, Fernando Navarrete, currently at 4th in the AM category. And it's the Tsunami Racing team run car, although not in the traditional Tsunami colours. They might have dug this one out quite late for Fernando and co. It wasn't an improvement that time around for the Spaniard. Let's see what Q1 Track Racing can do here with Steen's long in. He is the pro in that Pro-Am car, currently 4th fastest overall. Remember, this was a car that was fighting for the overall championship before we introduced the silver class category for this year, and they were definitely favourites for the Pro-Am championship this year. but it hasn't really been going their way. 5th in the Pro-Am standings going into this weekend, yet to win a race.
Yeah, well, it's been a tough season for Stina's Longin, and obviously looking to try and bring back into it. Really, it's very unlike them. Like we said, they are former, championship contenders. Nicholas Salins, of course, at the wheel alongside him once again, as well as once again the timer ticks down. We've got 4 minutes still to go. There is, of course, the car that is being driven by Rodriguez, also partnered by Luca Franca, as we now guide our way back into the pits. The 54 machine, Ebby Motors, with Gianluca Giorgi and Luigi Peroni. Now in the pits this time, waiting to go back out again, just having some final words of wisdom with the garage. And all smiles there, by the looks of it, at Burgers Motorsport.
He's already mucking about. He's like, oh, well, it's done, isn't it?
Well, at the moment,
look at that, he's already celebrating.
It's 1.7 seconds between P1 and P2. Longoni, obviously with a little bit of work to do. He has gone higher than H. De Mello. Of course, De Mello in the pits at the moment.
I think normally we need a Portuguese translator, and this weekend we need a Dutch translator.
Well, I think obviously they're very happy with the performance this weekend. Obviously, Paul Meijer, as I said, recently taking part in an endurance race here around Paul Ricard, now returning back to the top once more, as we now see yet more cars across the line. This is, oh, dearie me, okay, the 57 going for a bit of a spin this time, and that is the Q1 Track Racing Porsche of Nicholas van Dierendonk. It was taking a detour off circuit, so not a voyage of discovery that he really wanted in the closing stages of this session here in Q1.
But pitched it round beautifully.
It was majestic.
Rather lovely 360 there at turn 2.
It was, yeah, absolutely. But
10 from the judges.
The 91 of Ian Rodriguez now coming through the final sector, looking to try and muster in some improvements. He has gone green in the first sector, I should say. Got to make his way through the middle sector, I should say. It was the first sector he was in. But green in the first sector nonetheless, our championship leader, and is looking to bring the gap down to Paul Meijer right at the top of the shop. Obviously, we'll need to displace quite a fleet of cars. Obviously, Nunez, Longin, De Mello, Longoni in front. And then, of course, Paul Meijer up at the very top. But we'll need to find a really spicy middle and final sector in order to unseat the Burgers Motorsport car from the top of the tree. But as far as Rodriguez is concerned, his priorities are going to be to at least jump, ideally, the likes of H. De Mello, Stina's Longin, and also Nunez as well. Fernandez has moved into 8th fastest now, with Martins down in P9. We then also have further down Navarrete, just outlaying the rest of the top 10. Scanicchio moving into 15th fastest ahead of Romagnoli in 15th here now. So Scanicchio moving up the order. Rodriguez green again in the middle. But still a ways off Paul Meijer right now, just under 0.7 of a second the difference at this stage, as he now comes through the final sector. This time it was a 38.156 from Ian Rodriguez in that last sector, and now looking to certainly dally his way through the final few corners, coming into Pond Corner this time, and will lay down the throttle once more and up towards the line. Can he move his way into second fastest ahead of Ludovico Longoni? Here comes Rodriguez. Yes, 1.4 now the gap between Meijer and Rodriguez this time, and a flash of the lights as well. Looks like he had a little bit of traffic and a snap sideways coming through Bousset.
In de race gaat automatisch, in mijn idee, als de temperatuur iets omhoog gaat, gaat hij achter automatisch.
Again, if any Dutch viewers want to let us know what was being said there. So yeah, Ian Rodriguez, the Guatemalan, with a personal best in all 3 sectors there, despite that big snap into Le Bousset, and being a little bit compromised by the slow-moving Q1 Track Racing car on the second apex of the corner. This is the sister car, Goncalo Fernandez, currently 8th fastest overall. Making his way through, and the rally convert, who is surely on his last lap here. We've only got 10 seconds left in the session, less than that now. Checkered flag about to be waved. Fernandez here, is he going to finish this one off? Yes, he is. And so it's not a personal improvement so far in either of the 2 sectors so far in this lap, I'm afraid. Let's see what happens when he drives it up towards the timing line, the Portuguese driver, and remains in 8th fastest. And so, well, no real surprises George, at the moment, it is provisional pole for Paul Meijer. Ian Rodriguez still improving out there. He's just done a personal best in the middle sector, but I can't see him finding 1.4 seconds on this final lap.
No, I think that's going to be a little bit of a stretch as the checkered flag still being waved out on circuit. The timer well and truly ticked to 0. We now ride on board here with Ryan James with that personal best in the first sector. As you can see, still 1.2 away from the top, but it is a personal best. And yet another one in the middle sector as well. So looking to lift himself ideally up out of P12, maybe even a run up at the top 10. If he's fortunate. He's got a little bit of traffic though in front. A GDL car just making its way through Bousset at the moment. That's the 19 that's heading around the circuit. In fact, no, that's Tsunami RT of Fernando Navarrete just making his way through the final sector, but giving some clear space for the McLaren Artura. So now it comes through the final few corners on this course. Of course, Ryan James hailing from the United States, partnering up with Ollie Webb here this weekend, a very experienced driver who has certainly won his own fair share as Ollie Webb, obviously ELMS champion, that's European Le Mans Series champion back in 2014, and 24 Hours of Le Mans LMP2 third back in 2014 as well. Also taking part in the International GT Open with Greystone GT last season. As now Ryan James comes into the pits, not completing that final lap. Paul Meijer, it looks like it's going his way. With 3 pole positions before this, he makes it 4th here today.
Not a bad effort from Ryan James there. 6th fastest bronze driver in the field, 4th of the Pro-Am runners. Top bronze in the Pro-Am category there as well. Yes, it is pole position once again for Paul Meijer.
So let's run through the results after a very measured performance by Hansvies Motorsport and Burgers, with Paul Meijer on pole position for a 4th time this season. A great lap from the Dutchman to register himself at the top. Ian Rodriguez 2nd, Ludovico Longoni 3rd, H. de Mello in 4th, Stinas Longin in 5th. Then comes Diego Nunez, Franvel Bugliotti, Giancarlo Fernandez and Leandro Martins. Fernando Navarrete rounding out the top 10. As we now move down into P11 territory, we have Gianluca Giorgi as well as Ryan James, Giacomo Giobergia in 13th, and then comes Nicholas van Dierendonk, 15th then for Davide Scanicchio, Riccardo Romagnoli in 16th place, with Sebastian Fortuna in 17th, Camel Perrion down in 18th, with Benjamin Cook in his first start for SVC down in 19th place. So it's Paul Meijer at the top of the shop. We'll see how he gets on later on this afternoon. Join us as we go racing for race 1 here at Paul Ricard this afternoon. But until then, it's goodbye.